County Dems. Thank you so much for the warm welcome for all of us tonight, and how wonderful it is to be here with you and to see a room full of Democrats tonight. Thank you, thank you. So it was just about a year ago today that I was last here in Piscataquis County talking to Piscataquis County Dems. I will admit to you that it was a much smaller crowd on that day, but it was a really, really special day for me. Your own Sue Mackey Andrews actually took me out all around the county to see and experience what was going well and the incredible progress that you all are making in so many ways, but also to make sure that she was sharing with me and showing me the challenges that people in this county face. And sometimes we talk about two Maines, but the reality is there are many Maines. And in Piscataquis County, there are unique sets of challenges that include poverty, the opioid crisis hitting particularly hard, but also wonderful ways of meeting those challenges, like building the commons and people coming together and Democrats bringing forward candidates and talking to people about who is going to fight for us. So thank you for everything you do in this realm and the fact that you are coming together in the way that you are. Whether or not we are electing Democrats from this county right now, you are making a difference. And we are so, so, so thankful for that. So I thought I would start off tonight just by sharing a little bit about myself and why and how I got into public service in the first place. And for those of you who, a couple of you mentioned that you saw our ads, we started going up this week on TV. This story will sound a little familiar, so I will keep it brief. But my entry into public service was a little unusual. It wasn't something that I planned on. Years ago, though, I came into the house with our three then very small children, Julian, Alec, and Josie, and I heard a message that was left on our answering machine for my husband, Ben. And the person on the other end of the line said, "Hey, Ben, we know you're very busy." So Josie was like 1, the boys were 4 and 5 and running around in circles. And Ben, we know you're very busy, but we're wondering if you would consider running for the town council. So I heard this message and I thought, Ben is definitely not running for the town council. And then I thought, actually, I think that's the right job for me, and I think it's a place that I can really make a difference. And so I ran for that office and I won. And I will tell you that 10 years later, the very thing that drove me to run for that town council seat is still what drives me today. And it is a belief that public service is really about one thing. It's about how we improve the lives of people around us and how we lift each other up. And I will also share with you that whether it has been during those years on this 7-person town council, whether it has been as a state representative or during my 2 terms as speaker, what I have learned is if you are willing to listen, and if you're willing to sit down around the table, especially with the people that you think you disagree with most, it is still possible to really get things done and to actually make progress for people. And that is why I am running for the United States Senate today, because I know that we can still do that, even though we don't see it happening in Washington, D.C. So, listen, here in Maine, all of us in this room probably think this, but I will share with you that wherever I am in the state, people come up and say, "What happened to Susan Collins?" People will say, "I have voted for her 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, and it seemed like she was different from other people in Washington, D.C., but it just doesn't seem that way anymore." And look, we all know this is real for us. Around the country, people are very invested in this race because Susan Collins put herself on people's radar. But here in Maine, we feel left behind. When she voted to repeal the individual mandate, it threw us all into chaos. None of us know what is going to happen with the Affordable Care Act. We sit here waiting for 2020 and what will happen in the federal court system. And yet in Maine, in the State House, we looked at each other and we said, people are scared and people are in danger of losing their health care. What are we going to do about it? So we actually, in 2019, put into law all the core provisions of the ACA, so that no matter what happens in those federal courts, no matter what happens in any future congressional attempts to repeal the Affordable Care Act, people in Maine will know that an insurance company can never deny you coverage because of a pre-existing condition. Can I take this off? It's so awkward to just stand in one place. Was that unsuccessful in the past when people tried? Okay, I'm gonna try. Thank you. Okay, so additionally, and interestingly, in the same bill, that Trump tax bill that included the repeal of the individual mandate, Susan Collins also voted for people who don't live in Maine, giving a $1.5 trillion tax cut to corporations and the wealthiest families in America, and leaving us behind. And I will tell you that during my years in the State House, a big part of my job, especially as Speaker, has been to make sure that I am out everywhere in the state, not just in the town that I live in Freeport, Maine, but listening with our representatives and candidates and understanding what is happening for families and individuals here. And what people in Maine say is not, could you please give me an income tax cut? They say, we're literally worried about whether we can stay in our homes as we age. The cost of property taxes is a burden we cannot bear. And so in the State House in 2019, we passed a package of 4 property tax bills to make sure that people will feel a real difference. And people will as soon as this fall and next spring when they go to pay their property taxes. Susan Collins also has taken more than $1 million from the pharmaceutical industry and the healthcare industry. And yet movement on lowering the cost of prescription drugs has not happened. It is not rocket science, I will tell you, because in the state of Maine, in 2019, we passed a package of prescription drug bills to lower the cost of prescription drugs. And we made sure that people in Maine, we're waiting for the federal waiver still, but we will be able to import drugs legally from Canada. We will make sure that we are cracking down on the middleman who's actually raising costs on people. We will make sure that drug companies, when they raise their costs, have to actually be transparent about why. These are the kind of things that, and the ways in which Susan Collins is letting us down. And I will tell you this, that working in the State House with a governor like Paul LePage, with a Republican-controlled Senate and a Democrat-controlled House, working in the State House with a Democratic governor and a Democratic-controlled House and Senate, there is a way to get things done. Because here in Maine, in addition to the contrast that I just demonstrated about Susan Collins, we have actually made a difference for people in the ways that count. We have made access to the ballot easier by passing automatic voter registration. We have increased healthcare coverage to an additional up to 90,000 additional low-income Mainers. We have made sure that even in this country, as we worry about what happens to Roe versus Wade, and as we see other states try to restrict or ban access to reproductive health care and abortion when a woman chooses to have one, we have made sure that we have protected and expanded a woman's access to reproductive health care here in Maine. And we have taken bold action on climate change, setting goals to drastically reduce carbon emissions, and also setting goals to get to 100% renewable energy generation in this state. That's the kind of leadership that we need to see in Washington, D.C. And I just have to also add, although I appreciate Kathleen's words so much, that you should also know, I do know how to stand up to a bully. I had to deal with that man for 6 years, 2 of them as my first years as Speaker. And when he tried to get in the way of us getting things done, like when we were trying to combat the opioid crisis, he vetoed our bill when we literally were trying to save the lives of people who overdose. And you know what? Republicans and Democrats came together and said, no way. No way. We've got work to do, and we're getting it done. So listen, here in Maine, we feel acutely the way that Susan Collins has left us behind. She's clearly putting the interests of special interests ahead of the interests of Mainers. But this race matters to more than just the 1.3 million people in Maine. This race matters to our country, because no matter what happens in that Democratic 2020 presidential election, we cannot afford to have a United States Senate in the control of Mitch McConnell. We have seen what he does with this president and how he props him up. He has literally reduced the United States Senate to a rubber stamp for judicial nominees and appointees of this president. And look, Susan Collins has voted with Mitch McConnell and President Trump 94% of the time, more than she has during any other time in her 22 years in office. But if we want to change that balance of power in the United States Senate, it has to include the state of Maine. And acknowledging that that is a great deal of pressure on us, it is also a task that we are up to. I will tell you, I am so proud to be running for United States Senate and to be here with all of you, shoulder to shoulder and hand in hand tonight. And I'm proud to do that with the other wonderful, smart, accomplished candidates who are also running as well. And there will be so many opportunities where we are pushed, where people will try to put wedges in between us. Do not let them. We have a goal. It is replacing Susan Collins in the United States Senate. I will tell you that even though I wake up every day thinking, I'm mom to Julian, Alec, and Josie, I'm Speaker of the House, the final thing I tell myself, and that drives me through every day for the past 17 weeks, is we are going to defeat this woman, and we are going to take control of the United States Senate. So, in closing, what I want you to know is this. You can count on me to fight for us there the same way that I have fought for us for 7 years in the State House. You know exactly what you're getting with me. I've taken 2,000 votes, and you can know where I stand on every single issue. And you, first of all, will never have to wait for a 45-minute speech to know how I'm going to vote. You can know unequivocally that when I go to the United States Senate, I will fight for every single person in this country to have health care coverage, to have wellness coverage, to make sure that it is quality. You will know that I will charge into that body believing that climate change is the most emergency issue that we have to deal with, and that bold and immediate action is needed. And maybe most importantly, you can know that for every decision that I have to make and every vote that I take, I will do it with the belief that every child in this country is our own child. Every single one. And that not for a day should any of these children be hungry or living in fear or worried that they're going to go into their schools and be shot. Those are the things that I will fight for. That is the person that I am. So I know here in Maine, we are ready for a new United States Senator. I would be honored to be that person, but I am honored to be on this journey with you no matter what. Thank you for everything you do. Let's go get this done. Margarita.
Hi. About international relations, because going to the U.S. Senate, that's going to be a big piece of the work that you do there. Can you press that topic?
Sure. Can I ask you, do you want to be more specific in your question, or just broadly speaking?
Broadly speaking, what the priorities are.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So Margarita asked just about for me to address foreign relations, international relations. So I think, because that's such an open-ended question, I'm just going to speak in the broadest terms about it. If people have more specific questions, I'm happy to address those as well. Look, we are clearly in a time under this president where decisions are being made very rashly, and without any thought as to what our historical role has been and why, and how, if we want to make plans to extricate ourselves from situations, how we do it in a way that still allows stability and long-term goals for our values as Americans in this world. So what I can tell you, again, this is such a broad question, Margarita, is that as a United States Senator, I will want to make sure that we have a clear direction on what we think our role should be in the world and how we participate. And if we want to make changes in terms of the places that we participate, that we are doing it in accordance with our allies, that we are making sure that we are keeping our promises, that we are making sure that we are keeping allies safe, and that we do things with forethought and planning. Sure. Yes. Hi, and could I ask people to just, if you don't mind, also say your name as you stand up.
I'm Wayne LeBay-Babin, and I live in Greenville.
Hi, Wayne.
It appears that Susan Collins, they don't want to lose that seat, obviously. The Republicans are really concerned. So a lot of money is going to come in. Matter of fact, a lot of money. So in order to compete with her, it appears to me that out of the candidates that are running to go against her, you seem to be the only one that's getting the money. So do you know where your money comes from? And this is what compromises the system, is that because of all that money coming in, people get bought. Because I'll tell you what, if I write you a check for $100,000, you better let me come in your office when I want it. And this is what's going on. So can you tell us how you're gonna raise that amount of money to compete with her, and maybe where it's gonna come from?
Sure. Yes,
And
Wayne.
will that compromise you?
Thank you for that question. So first of all, let me say that the challenge of defeating a 22-year incumbent is an enormous endeavor. And obviously, all of us have seen wonderful, smart, experienced people go up against Susan Collins and lose by a greater margin each time. So first of all, what I want to start with is the state of play in this race and the fact that this is a winnable race for all the right reasons. Susan Collins, as a United States Senator, has left people in Maine behind, and people in Maine see it and feel it and are ready for somebody new to represent us. That being said, there's a couple of things at play. The first is that for Mitch McConnell, the balance of power in the United States Senate counts on Susan Collins remaining in her seat. Conversely, for the Democrats, the idea of being able to win the Senate is a challenging one, but a doable one if a number of seats are won and protected at the same time. And as I mentioned before, that includes the state of Maine. This means that for both the Democrats and the GOP, this seat means everything. And further, for the Republicans, Susan Collins is the last Republican from New England in either the House or the Senate. So symbolically, her seat matters very much in this way. Yes, it will be a race that costs a lot of money. Mitch McConnell literally said, right after her vote for Kavanaugh, Susan Collins will be well funded, I assure you. And we absolutely are seeing that happen. She has over $8 million, I believe, in her coffers. And yes, I have been successful in fundraising because I am determined to win this race. And I know that by going and talking to people and listening to people, we can do that together. I am very proud of the fact that I am not taking any corporate PAC money in this race. I am proud of the fact that nearly 3,800 Mainers have contributed to my campaign, who believe in us. I am proud of the fact that 97% of our contributions are $100 or less. So, what I want to assure you is that in the same way that I have acted with integrity during all of the years that those of you have known me in the State House, that I have worked for us and fought for us and been on the right side of things and been the person who has made my champion issue lifting people out of poverty, fighting the opioid crisis, increasing renewable energy generation. These are the very things that I will do in the U.S. Senate. And to Wayne, to answer your direct question, no, I will not be bought.
You said that 97% is coming from people $100 or less.
97% of contributions are $100 or less.
What is the other 3% doing? Is it corporations?
I know, as I said, I don't take any contributions from corporate PACs. They are individual contributions, or if an existing United States Center wants to contribute to me from their leadership PAC, then they can do that.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, Carol.
We know from our conversations out in our communities that education is a high priority for many.
Question was about education, and this is the greatest investment that we can make in ourselves, education. I was very proud that in the State House, we have increased our state investment in education by the highest amount that we have seen during any 10-year period. And that when we did that, we made sure that we were also changing our funding formula to get more money flowing to rural areas, recognizing the extreme challenge we have with declining populations of people and making sure that we are able to keep our schools open and also keep the cost of property taxes down. In terms of the federal government, we need to make sure that we are properly sending funds to the states to actually help with the cost of education. There was a time actually where that was in play, and it is what we need to think about again.
Thank you. I think that needs to be we have 2 more speakers, so.